Welcome to Amada Books. Here we go. This is On Books. My name is Chris. I poured myself a lovely little bourbon drink here, and you and I are going to talk about Seth Godin's book, The Dip, which is about one of the most fabulous words, the Q word, quitting. Yep, this is a book about quitting. How do you know when to quit, and how do you know when to stick it out? That's what we're going to talk about today. The author of The Dip is Seth Godin. Do you know Seth? If not, you should. He's someone to know. He is probably one of the top marketing entrepreneurs of our time. He's very prolific. He's written well over a dozen books, and they're all less than 100 pages. There's these little books. This one, The Dip here, is about 76 pages, it looks like. So pretty short. And they're all very specific and quite easy to read. He's, like I said, he's prolific. He also writes a blog post every day on his blog. You can just Google Seth Godin. You'll find him and you'll be able to check that out. So great writer. I'm a huge fan of his, and we are going to look at The Dip. The subtitle of the book is A Little Book That Teaches You When to Quit and When to Stick. In just a moment, I'm going to dive into the top 5 takeaways that impacted my life after reading The Dip. Before I do that, as always, I'm going to read the first page of the book to set things up. So here we are. The Dip. Here's the first page. I feel like giving up. Almost every day, in fact. Not all day, of course, but there are moments. My bet is that you have those moments too. If you're the kind of high-achieving, goal-oriented person who finds him or herself reading a book like this, well, you're probably used to running into obstacles. Professional obstacles, personal obstacles, even obstacles related to personal fitness or winning board games. Most of the time, we deal with the obstacles by persevering. Sometimes we get discouraged and turn to inspirational writing like stuff from Vince Lombardi. Quitters never win and winners never quit. Bad advice, Vince. Winners quit all the time. They just quit the right stuff at the right time. Most people quit. They just don't quit successfully. In fact, many professionals and many marketplaces profit from quitters. Society assumes you're going to quit. In fact, businesses and organizations, they count on it. If you learn about the systems that have been put in place to encourage quitting, you'll be more likely to beat them. And once you understand the common sinkholes that trip up so many people, what I like to call the dip, you'll be one step closer to getting through it. Extraordinary benefits accrue to the tiny minority of people who are able to push just a tiny bit longer than most. Extraordinary benefits also accrue to the tiny majority with the guts to quit early and refocus efforts on something new. In both cases, it's about being the best in the world, about getting through the hard stuff and coming out the other side. In 3 lines, I'll sum it up. Quit the wrong stuff, stick with the right stuff. Have the guts to do one or the other. Used to be one of the wretched ones and Used to be one of the wretched ones and you liked you for that. Used to be one of That's me reading from Seth Godin's The Dip. That's the first page of the book. This book came to me when I was at a time going to start my company 1 month, and I had to quit a job that was very secure. I was working at a company called General Assembly, which is pretty popular now. They've grown quite a bit. And back then I had a really nice, cushy job. I was working with amazing, smart people and, doing work that I thought was changing the world. Why would I leave that to start my own company? Well, I took advice from a friend of mine who had made a similar dive of leaving her full-time kind of corporate job to start her own company. And she said that this book had gotten her through that tough time. And I can tell you now that this book indeed inspired me. Seth Godin is so inspiring. And I've come back to this book quite a few times since then when I'm in hard times. So These are the 5 takeaways that really resonated with me the most during that time, especially, that made me rethink quitting and whether I was going to quit or whether I was going to stick with where I was at. All right, so starting off with number 5 of the top 5 takeaways from this book. Number 5, strategic quitting is not reactive quitting. So there's a difference here. He makes a distinction between what he calls strategic quitting and reactive quitting. It's pretty clear what this means. Strategic quitting is making the conscious decision, based on all the choices that are available to you, to ask yourself, is this a dead end thing compared with something else that I should be investing in? Is that, making this strategic, is this a reasonable choice that I should be making and really thinking about it, versus reactive quitting, which is just quitting out of fear or giving up or money or being scared or whatever it is that's making you react in the moment and not being strategic. Question, is there something now that you should be quitting? Is it your job? Is it a relationship that you're in? Is it a hobby that you're doing out of just because you feel like you should do it every week? You show up to do tennis lessons, but you're not really enjoying it. Let's just go through a thought puzzle here, asking yourself these questions as I take you through this book. So think of that now. Think of something that maybe you should quit. I won't tell anybody. This is just you and me here. You can just think of it in your head. Now ask yourself, when you think of this, when you think of leaving it, do you want to leave it because it's strategic, because you actually think that there's something better out there and that you won't persevere if you keep staying in this position? Or is it just reactive? Are you just panicking? Or you just have no options, or you feel like you have no options and nowhere to turn and you're making some drama out of it? Just hold that in your head there. I'm going to go deeper into these differences as we go through the top 5 list. So that brings me to number 4. Number 4, if it's worth doing, there's probably a dip. So now what does Seth Godin mean by the dip, right? That's the title of the book. Well, I want you to picture, he has a lot of graphs in here, but we can picture this. I want you to picture a valley. So it's high on the left and high on the right, and in the middle, there's a dip. Yeah, duh, right? A dip in the middle. So the idea here is that at the beginning of starting something, when you start something, you are just so ecstatic and excited, right? Wow, I just got my own website. I'm starting my own business. I have my little photo up there, new URL. Everything's going to be cool. I'm going to get customers. Everything's going to be amazing now. And then 5 days from now, that's not the reality. Expectations and reality wear off. It's hard to get customers. You're paying money to have a developer make something for you. Everything seems like it's going to hell. The point here is that we start off on a high, but you're going to hit dips. You're going to hit lows. And the point that Seth's making is you need to expect these dips and decide whether you need to go through them to the highs, to winning, to being successful like all successful people, or whether you need to quit. That's what the dip's about, and it's in the middle there. So the dip is only one of 3 potential ways that any accomplishment is going to unfold. So the dip is the one example. I'm going to give you the other 2. The other 2 aren't as glamorous. The dip is good. If you make it through the dip successfully, you're coming out, as a success. But the 2 other options, the 2 other ways that this could unfold, number 2 are the cul-de-sac, which is pretty much what it sounds like. You start something and you just go in circles. It doesn't really get better, doesn't really get worse. It's just what it is. It's like one of those dead-end jobs that you have, or dead-end relationships, dead-end activities. You start taking classes to learn to become a web developer, and you never really put in the right amount of time to do anything, or but you're taking the courses week after week and you're like, this isn't going anywhere. I feel shitty about myself. That's a cul-de-sac. We don't want to be there. Number 3, this is the third of the 3 different curves that we have. We have the dip, we have the cul-de-sac, and number 3, we have the cliff. Yes, the cliff. The cliff. It's exactly what it sounds like. You're going, and then just off the cliff. Seth says that the cliff is rare but scary. I think something like cigarettes would be the cliff, where if you're smoking every day, you're doing something really harmful to your body, at some point it's going to catch up to you, and there may not be a way to get out of that dip. It may be terminal. That's horrible. Similarly, if you're running a big company and you're spending way more money than you have, you may find one day that you are in complete bankruptcy and you don't have this chance. We don't want to get to the cliff. We want to avoid the cliff. And that's why we want to focus on the dip. Tip number 3, be the best in the world. Seth is a prominent believer that if you're going to step forward and do anything in life, you better be ready to be the best at it. In this book, he gives quite a few examples of why being the best gives 10 times the reward of being second place. He shows how the best, the number one, it's the number one ice cream flavor here. Do you know what that is? What would you say is the number one? Vanilla, duh, right? Number 2 is chocolate. Would you guess what number 3 is? I didn't know this one. Butter pecan? I don't know if I've ever had that one. Well, here he's showing in this graph that vanilla is, in this graph, about 3 or 4 times more popular than chocolate. He shows similarly with Netflix that the top ranking Netflix views, movies or whatever, get bringing way more money than the number 2 or the number 3. The same thing goes with movies in the movie theaters. He says number 1 matters. If you're going to put time into it, you want to be the top guy, because being number 2, it's just not worth your time. He gives an example here from Jack Welch, who remade GE, General Electric, and I really like this little story here. It's a short little story. So, what Jack knew. When Jack Welch remade GE, the most fabled decision he made was this: if we can't be number 1 or number 2 in an industry, we must get out. Why sell a $1 billion division that's making a profit quite happily while ranking number 4 in market share? Easy, because it distracts the management attention. It sucks resources and capital and focuses and energy. And most of all, it teaches people in the organization that it's okay not to be the best in the world. Jack quits dead ends. By doing so, he freed up resources to get his other businesses through the dip. So that's it. Tip number 3, be the best in the world. Tip number 2, reasons you might fail to become the best in the world. You run out of time and quit. You run out of money and quit. You get scared and quit. You're not serious about it and quit. You lose interest or enthusiasm or settle for being mediocre and quit. You focus on short term instead of long and quit when the short gets too hard. You pick the wrong things at which to be the best in the world because maybe you don't have the talent. And the number 1 tip, the thing I love the most about this book, some of the best advice here from the dip is, number 1, if you can't make it through the dip, don't start. Sure, it's human nature to want to quit when things hurt. And the dip, knowing that anything you get into that's worth doing, that's worth the challenge, that's worth the rewards, is going to eventually have this dip. You can ask yourself right now, when things get hard, are you going to stick through? Do you have the resources or the talent or the drive to get yourself through? If you know up front that you're not going to get through the dip, why even waste your time going through this challenge? So if you know that it's not going to work out and strategically you've thought through it and you know that you can't be the best, you know this won't be the best that you can do, then why even start? Why waste your time? What you need to do is find dips that you can get through, that you will persevere, and that the accomplishment on the other side of that dip is getting through something that makes you the best at the world in this. Whether that is success in a job or finding the best relationship or best friends, but find something that you're proud of and something that you can, persevere and put your energy into that can be rewarding. So quit the dips, quit the things that you know are not going to work right now, and put your energy into making something happen. Seth writes, "You're astonishing. How dare you waste it? Go ahead and make something happen. We're waiting." Well, thanks for listening to On Books. I bring you a new book every week. To keep you reading. There's no way you're going to read all the books on that long list in one lifetime. That's the dilemma of existential book reading that I am set out on. I will never read all the books that I can. You won't either, so I will help you. That's where we're at. So I have all these books. There's a bunch on the site right now. Sex at Dawn, Mating in Captivity, The First 20 Hours, Thinking Fast and Slow, Letters to a Young Poet. You can have all of these episodes, past episodes, for free on iTunes. Just go and download On Books. Also, please subscribe on iTunes. If you're interested, I have videos on YouTube. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. The site with all the book notes for this week's book, The Dip, and all the other books is at on-books.com. I'm on Twitter and Facebook at onbookshow. And if you want to submit questions for future books and get involved in the community here, you can submit them to me at chris@on-books.com. I'll be listing the books on the website, on-books.com. God damn, how many times did I say the website name? Write it down. And I'll be putting the upcoming books there so that you can contribute some questions to them or suggest how the book impacted your life. And I will potentially include that in a future episode. So leave your mark up on the site or email me, and hopefully you can hear yourself on a future episode. I will give you a shout out. This is On Books, and this is my band Birdstar playing in the background. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to meeting you next week. Until then, keep reading.